Good morning. It's a little before noon here in Southern California. A little bit cool out here in the shop. Maybe about 13 degrees Celsius. I'm going to attempt to cut a dovetail in a piece of steel this morning. I cut one on the opposite side already on this block of steel, and also let me zoom out a little bit here. Got the camera set low. Hopefully it works. I've already made a couple test cuts. I cut a pair of dovetails in this block. This is just a piece of scrap steel. No particular size or anything. And I cut a dovetail in this here. I'm trying to figure out a process to do this. What I'm going to attempt is to make a tool holder for a quick change tool post. It goes on the mini lathe. I got lots of these things, so I really don't need one, but this seemed like a good experiment in cutting a dovetail with the hand shaper. So if you don't have a mill and you have a shaper, or you don't have a dovetail cutter for the mill, this is a way you can get the job done. It may not be the most expedient way, but it is a way to get the job done. I'm finding out that trying to do this with a hand shaper is much different than trying to do it with a large power-driven shaper. It's a little more difficult, to say the least, and it takes, to me, I figured out a process of feeding and stepping to try to get the job done. So sort of whittle away at it, so to speak. So basically, I'm going to start at the top of the dovetail and work my way down to the bottom. So that said, I'm going to be shutting the camera on and off a few times because it's going to be a rather lengthy process. But anyway, I'll try to break in from time to time and show some of the work. So we need to zoom in on the cut, and hopefully, you know, I'm going to have to use the down feed most of the time. That's the way I can get this done. I tried doing it some other ways, but the down feed seems to be about the only way to whittle away at it. So right now I've determined where the bottom is, and I've set my 0 on my down feed dial to 0, so I know where the bottom's at when I get there. Most of it'll be towards the end of the process where that becomes important. The beginning of the process, I'm basically starting at the top of the dovetail and feeding until I can't feed anymore, and then stepping down. So it's going to take some time, and so I'll break in at different parts of the process. So I'm going to whittle away a little bit at the top right now, and then we'll break in with the camera and show you where it's at and the process. So let's get going. Okay, I'm 100 thousandths I've fed in 100 thousandths. I might add at this point that, let me see here. I'm looking in the camera. I got a burr on this end. Unfortunately, I wish I could cut in the opposite direction because I don't have a burr at this end. So I fed down 100 thousandths, and I started, actually I tried to start 10 thousandths below the top because I'm going to have to make a finish cut on this eventually. Vertically speaking, the distance we have to travel between the top and the bottom of the dovetail is 255 thousandths, or 5 thousandths more than a quarter of an inch, basically. So that's how far we got to go. A little hard for me to, I don't know exactly what distance we have to feed at 30 degrees because we're feeding the vertical axis at 30 degrees. So, you know, so it's a little bit further, right, than 255 thousandths. The vertical axis is set up with a dial indicator, and I don't have anything very special to do that with, but I do have some precision ground. Well, shoot, I can't get it in the camera, but I do have some precision ground pieces, angle pieces, and so I set that up on the vise, at the base of the vise, with a dial indicator, and so we've got that set right at 30 degrees. So I think at this point we're not getting any chatter yet. We will eventually if we keep going, because the tool bit is just like almost like a typical lathe type tool bit, 60-degree tool bit. You can see it in the camera there. It's basically ground at 60. It's at 60 degrees, but it's ground at 50 degrees. I've left 5 degrees on the vertical and the 5 degrees on the horizontal clearance. So basically, we're cutting at the tip. Can't really see it in the camera, but I'll take it out at the end of the video, and you'll be able to see it better. Anyway, that's the way the tool bit is. Just a simple tool bit. It's got a little back rake, maybe 5 degrees back rake on each one of the cutting surfaces, and maybe about the same on the tip. So basically what's going to happen is, if we keep feeding in the way we're going, eventually it's going to start chattering. We won't be able to make that big a cut with this little hand shaper. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the carriage out away from the cut, maybe, I don't know, maybe 10 thousandths or 15 thousandths, and then I'm going to go down again, and I'm going to keep doing that till I get to the bottom, and then I'm going to repeat the process. So we've been at this for about 10 minutes so far. I'm not trying to hurry up. I'm just trying to go along very, very slowly and methodically. So I'll bring you back in a few minutes when we get down a little deeper and we get ready to make the next offset. Okay, hopefully you can see the step in there. It's been about another 5 minutes. I moved the carriage 15 thousandths outwardly away from the cut, and I went down another 50 thousandths. So that's where I'm at. It's still cutting fairly smooth. You can see the step in there, right? So we're gonna maybe move the carriage out 5 or 10 thousandths, and we're gonna make another 50 thousandths cut. This is the only process I've figured out for doing this. Like I say, I've made four cuts previously, and I've tried different ways to do it, and I haven't been successful. This is the only one that's panned out each and every time. So I'm going with this process. I decided on the first dovetail I cut that actually if you get set up right and you know what you're doing, you can cut these dovetails pretty fast. Even on the mill with a dovetail cutter, it takes some time to cut a small dovetail, because you have to, you know, methodically work your way in little by little, because you can't, unless you got an awful big mill, you can't take a big enough bite to do it in one pass, you know. It takes a number of passes to do it, at least it does for me. So I'll bring you back again when we get down a little bit further. So let me move the camera back out a little bit. Okay, we've come down another 50 thousandths. I really don't know how far we have to go. I do have my dial zeroed, so I know in the camera this looks like a huge amount, but it's not as much as it looks like. The camera is sometimes a little bit deceiving. So now we're gonna move out. We're gonna move the carriage back out about 10 thousandths, and we're gonna go down another 50 thousandths. So I'll leave the camera on for a few seconds, and I'm gonna move the carriage out another 5, 10, maybe 10 thousandths. That's about right. And I'd put a little oil on the work. My arm probably is going to be in the way if I leave the camera out, because I have to get my arm in here to move the Z-axis. Each time I'm starting at 0. My dial, one rotation of the dial is 50 thousandths. So that's what I'm just using, one rotation of the dial each time. This is basically what I'm doing. So let me zoom back in on the cut again. I don't want to burn up a bunch of video here, time on repetition, so I'm just doing this for a few seconds here, and then you get the idea, right? So that's the main thing. You can see I'm not going at a super fast rate. I'm just slowly, methodically peckering away at it. We've been at this a half an hour now, so that'll give you some idea of time, and I'm guessing it's probably going to take another half an hour to complete. Eventually, what'll happen, it'll begin to chatter. Sometimes the oil will help stop that. But when the flat part of the cut gets too wide, it starts to chatter. Now we want to make nice. We want it to be making nice, clean cut. So I have good control this way of the vertical axis. So I'm going to shut the camera off again, and okay, it's only been a couple more minutes. You can't see in the camera, but we've got a pretty wide shelf in there right now. So, you know, I may move the carriage out about 15 thousandths this time. I've been moving at 10. As you can see, you can't completely see, but the way I've been stepping it, you know, I've been removing most all the material. So when we get done here and we get down to the bottom for the first time, I don't think we're going to have a whole heck of a lot of material to go. In fact, we may be able to do it in one vertical pass. What I'm going to stop a little shy of the bottom, because I found out that if I make a horizontal cut at the bottom in the end, then it leaves me a nice perfect bottom down there. So I have just a little bit of play in my clapper, so that part is not good, but it almost doesn't matter in reality. I've noticed it just recently, so I may have to fool with the tapered pin a little bit, or do something. But you don't want the clapper too tight, because it's not going to function. So anyway, that's where we're at. So I'm going to move the carriage out again about 15 thousandths. That shelf in there is getting pretty wide, so it's getting to be a little bit difficult cut, although there has been no chatter thus far. So I'm guessing also, for some reason, I think it's, if I remember right, it's probably one more rotation of the dial, we should get pretty close to the bottom, if not the bottom. So you're looking at probably about 50 thousandths of material to remove down there, or whatever it is, maybe less than that, because like I say, we're feeding at 30 degrees. So I'll bring you back in a few seconds, or a few minutes, not seconds. Okay, we've reached the bottom of the cut, technically, back to zero. So technically we're at the bottom of the cut, and so I'm not quite sure. I've kind of lost my scribe line on the end there, so I'm not sure how much more material we got to remove, but it's probably quite a bit. What I'll try to do now is I'll try to go back up to the top and set the tool on the first initial cut, and try to feed straight down again as far as I can, and see how we are. But we technically, the bottom groove at this point should be right at the bottom, according to my dial. So I'm not going to show this. This should actually feed down fairly quickly. So let's see. We've been at this for 45 minutes now, so we'll see how fast it takes to make this maybe last vertical feed. It's been my experience that once we make this feed down vertically, we're going to have to do a little fooling around at the bottom to try to get the bottom corner all cleaned up. But hopefully it's going to work. We've got some 5 degrees on both cutting surfaces, so we got to clean that up, horizontally anyway. We got to clean that up. So I'll bring you back. Turn the camera on for a few seconds here. I'm making the vertical cut. Been a couple minutes. We're taking off very little, you know. But when we get down towards the bottom, it should be getting to be a little bit more. Or we may have to feed out again. May have to feed the carriage out again. Okay, I'm going to shut the camera off, so we're burning up video time here. Okay, back again. The vertical cut is complete. I didn't have to move the carriage at all. I was able to go right straight down, so actually I took very little off in a few places, so actually my step method worked pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. So the vertical cut is done. And theoretically, I have the back of the dovetail is at the right height, So now we've got a little ledge there, a little tapered ledge that is 5 degrees or something. You know, I don't know how many thousandths it is at the outer part, but we've got to make a horizontal cut now. So we'll set the tool at the bottom, which I have a 0 on that, and we'll feed the carriage in, and I don't think I can do it on camera because my arm's going to be in the way. I have to reach over to the carriage dial in order to do that. Either that, or I guess I could feed the carriage automatically, maybe. We'll see. I may try that. But probably I can feed the carriage by hand better, because automatically it feeds 10 thousandths per stroke, so that might be a little bit much. So I'm going to try to maybe feed it about 5 by hand per stroke. So I'm going to clean up the bottom, and then we're going to put some dowels in there and see where we're at. So we may have to make another vertical cut to get the width of the dovetail correct. I have a measurement on that. I know exactly what it's supposed to be. Maybe I'll make a gauge block stack up for that. Or this is not real critical. The only thing is if the if the width of the dovetail isn't exactly correct, that means the handle on the quick change tool post will be in a little different position. So I don't like that. I'd rather it be in exactly the same position as it normally is. So we'll see. Anyway, I'm going to clean up. We'll shut the camera off now. I'm going to clean up the bottom, and that's just a matter of moving the carriage and you know, moving over into the dovetail and taking that little ridge out at the bottom. So I'm going to shut the camera off now. Okay, that went beautifully. The bottom cleaned up in just a few seconds, so it just went very smooth as glass. So right now I'm going to check the width of the dovetail, and we'll be back. We'll see how much more we got to take out of it. I tried to actually make it so I would have to take another vertical pass, but you never know, so we'll see. Okay, back again. I took it out of the vise, as you can see, and I don't know if I can put this in the camera or not. There it is. It came out, by the way, came out absolutely perfect. Let's see if I can. You know, when I zoom in, it doesn't look very well. It doesn't look very good, but I'll put it up on the vise and see if I can zoom in on it. So the cuts are nice looking. They're not bad at all. So there it is. I haven't done anything to it, so I need to, you know, soften all the edges and do some stuff. But I tried it. I'm not going to take the camera over to the lathe, but it fits absolutely perfect. Absolutely perfect. So the reading that I took across the dowels was actually a little bit large, but when actually I put it on the lathe, it came out perfect. It's not that critical, but I'm happy that the handle's in exactly the right spot. So we're happy with that. Anyway, hopefully that you learned something from this video. If you've got a hand shaper, maybe this is a way to make a dovetail. I'm no expert, so that's for sure. I'm trying to figure it out myself. But this is certainly a good way to make a couple small dovetails if you need to make them. And it actually, if you got a procedure, it goes along fairly well. If you were like me in the beginning, it was a little bit difficult because I had no idea how to make it, how to do it. I had no procedure, no nothing. So I watched some videos on YouTube, but they didn't help much because they were using a regular full-size shaper, and the process would be completely different. So this little hand shaper has got its limitations, but that said, it's great for dovetails, especially small ones. It's beautiful for keyways. So with that said, I'll call off now and get this video up on YouTube. But thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. And like I say, hopefully you got something out of this video. I know I got a big mess here to clean up, that's for sure. Anyway, thanks for watching. Talk to you later. Bye.